Okay, here is Benito Mussolini. He is the Italian dictator. He rose to power shortly after World War I. He was the leading proponent of fascism, another term that you should have defined already. He was originally a revolutionary socialist. He helped form and was part of a paramilitary fascist movement right after World War I. He becomes Prime Minister of Italy in 1922 and then began to take Italy into Northern Africa. Italy, of course, if you use the Googles again and you go onto a map or you go to the back of the room and look at the map, you can see Italy is a fairly small country, very mountainous, not advantageous to having enough resources and land to feed and create industrial power because of the lack of resources and food development. So they expanded into Northern Africa. Northern Africa is going to come into play huge during some of the battles, because it's been asked every year, why was some of the nastiest battles of World War II fought in Northern Africa? Because Northern Africa was where there was an abundance of raw materials, farmland, stuff that just wasn't available on that short jaunt across the Mediterranean to some of those other countries, such as Italy. Mussolini they were in, and occupy is not the right word, but they were involved in resource grab or land grabs in Libya, Somalia, Ethiopia, and Albania, because it was just a hop, skip, and a jump right across the Mediterranean. Um, and his movement in Northern Africa really made him weak on the continent of Europe and in the country of Italy. And so when he saw his little buddy, and Mussolini, again, short man's disease, guys. Mussolini is not in stature. He's very, very short. Um, I gotta get a drink. But he sees all the movements of Hitler and the things that Hitler's doing, and he wants to be Hitler's buddy because here's another guy that wants to be king of the hill and knows that he probably isn't strong enough militarily to become that. He knows that Stalin could overtake him at any moment if he wanted to. He knows that Hitler could overtake him at any moment. So he endears himself to Adolf Hitler. He aligned himself totally with the German government, with the German army, and he relied on Hitler to prop up his own leadership and to pat him on the back and make him look good on the world stage. It was interesting because Mussolini has to be saved a couple of times by the German army, and personally a couple of times, but then the German army has to save Mussolini's rule in Northern Africa. Hitler's got to send the Desert Fox into Northern Africa to back up and essentially bail out Mussolini's armed forces, because Mussolini does not have a lot of people and does not have a very large army, like I mentioned a few seconds ago. But he was very much into wanting to win stuff. Militarily, he wanted to go in and be a very aggressive and win battles and do all that. His thirst for military glory was like second to none. Hitler wanted to rule the world and wanted to be and was this terroristic guy. Mussolini wanted the "good job, Benito" kind of thing. He wanted that recognition for, hey, I won round one. Well, what about the match goes 15 bouts, or 15 rounds in a boxing match. It's 12 to 15 rounds. Well, he'd went around and he'd want somebody to pat him on the back. He'd get his rear end kicked, and Hitler would have to come in and save the day. The funny thing about it, at the end of his life, I mean, he was shot and killed like shortly after the war is over. Like Germany surrenders and Mussolini, you out, you dead. He was shot and killed. But his whole intent when he became the fascist ruler in Italy was that he wanted to, and the reason that he jumped into Northern Africa was that he wanted to expand the Italian Empire to where he would be renowned as the guy that reinvigorated and reinvented the Roman Empire. If you look at Julius Caesar and what he did with the Roman Empire from ancient times in that era, in that area of Rome and that whole region of Europe and Northern Africa, the Roman Empire was monstrous. And Julius Caesar was in charge, and that's what Benito Mussolini wanted. He wanted to be known as the new Julius Caesar, and that the new Italian Empire was going to be, referenced in the same breath as the Roman Empire. Never came to be, by the way. He did make their prominence in his area of the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. In those areas, they were very, very prominent militarily. Hence the reason that his European, again, I mentioned that, and I'm being redundant, but I want you to tip. If I say it more than once, you probably want to remember what old bald guy. Look at that. My future's so bright, shining off the top of my head, guys. I thought I'd throw that in there. He takes Italy into a national poverty and industrial weakness because he just didn't know what to do because he was so inflexible with his thought process and so concerned about his military that he really was an ineffective national leader, just a bad national leader. Only thought about, he was a fighter, essentially, if that's what you would want to say, just because he loved the military and the aggression of military action so much versus being a national leader and doing things to make sure his people were fed and all that. I mean, fascism, when he first took over office, I mean, he got rid of all of the cronies from the previous regimes that were politically faced. He made fascism the official political system in Italy. He promoted fascist leaders to positions within his government. And I mean, he lacked the understanding and the power to resolve national problems. He pursued imperialistic dreams, and really his armies became so depleted because he wore them out. He's like, okay, we got that done. Let's go. He wore his people out. He really denounced Churchill and Daladier and the Brits and the French. He couldn't stand them, hated them with a passion. When he first aligned himself with Hitler in the German army, most of his military people were like, no, we don't like this dude. We don't like anything that he stands for. And Mussolini really had to be a good convincer. And he was able to sway the thought process of most of his cronies around him that were anti-Hitler to believe in, oh yeah, this is a good thing that we're allied, that we have this alliance with the Nazi Party and the German armies and Hitler, he he was a little terror, because if you didn't like it, you out, you gone. He wasn't responsible for all the deaths that the other ones were, but um, he didn't put up with a lot of junk. Okay, and he really didn't have to, because he was such a good orator. I mean, when he stood up in front of his people and spoke, he could grab a room. He could get everybody's attention, and he could start to convince, from the common man all the way up through his militaries, that what he was doing was the right thing, and how we're going to go about it was the right way. And his actions proved a little bit differently, but his charisma as an orator is what really got him the ability to promote and create that fascist leadership movement within Italy. Okay, guys? So the last time that Hitler rescued him was, about a year and a half before he died, before he was killed. Um, Italy had been taken over by the Allies, and Mussolini was on the run, and he ran to the northern hills of Italy. And his buddy, Hitler, Mussolini's sitting there in the grass, right? And he's barking to the big dog on the porch, because he wants to be up on the porch with the big dog. And so the big dog comes in, and he rescues him, and he pulls him up onto the porch. And he's like, okay, you can be the leader of your little area of northern Italy, because I don't know that we're going to be able to get the rest of the country back, at least not immediately. So Hitler was like, oh, whew, I could save some face and I'm still, I've been ousted from the main part of my country, but Hitler just gave me back my little region in northern Italy that's right up there close to Germany, and where the Germans had a stronghold. And fighting in Italy was, we're going to talk about this a lot, but was very difficult because of all the terrain. It really was difficult. So anybody that had a stronghold, it was hard to take that over because of the vantage point of the opposition, whether it be the Allies or the Axis powers. Whoever held a strong position within those mountains was really kind of in charge. And so he went running to northern Italy. And he's backed up against the wall. I mean, they're closing in on him, and here comes the Nazis, and they save him, but too little, too late. He thought he was able to save face, but that only happened for a little while. But the other thing that he did, and this will be the last thing I'll talk about, but the other thing that he did was, in November of 1942, right before Hitler had to rescue him again, he went to Hitler and he implored him. He's like, please, 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 why don't you go make peace with Joseph Stalin, so that all we have to worry about are the Brits, the Americans, and the French? Because if we keep fighting on two fronts, I don't know that this is going to turn out well. So he had a good thought, right? And Hitler told him to go trot yourself back, because Hitler wasn't having any part of it, right? And so then that's when the invasion of Sicily and all this other stuff we're going to talk about in days ahead, but and then he had to be rescued. So that's a little bit about Mussolini. So now you've got the videos. You've got the terrorists, Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, Tojo. You've got XC. You've got the intro video. You will either be doing or will have done the Japanese internment, which is jumped ahead a little bit. And only do the organizer. You've got a little bit of writing there with hypotheses and some questions to answer, and there is no document A. You either found that out, or you will find that out as it's handed to you, depending on when you're watching this. My guess is most of you are going to probably get this one on Friday, but maybe you'll get this one on Tuesday. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. Just know that I'll see you on Monday.